In the autumn of 1982, an unseen terror stalked the aisles of American pharmacies. A wave of inexplicable deaths began, each linked by a common, trusted household item. This is the chilling story of the Tylenol Murders, a crime that shattered public trust and forever altered the landscape of consumer safety. We delve into the mystery. First victim was Mary Kellerman, a 12-year-old girl from Elk Grove Village, Illinois. She woke up with a cold and took an extra-strength Tylenol capsule. Within hours, she was dead. Her death was initially attributed to natural causes, a tragic but isolated event. Just hours later, in Arlington Heights, Adam Janis collapsed and died. His brother, Stanley, and Stanley's wife, Teresa, rushed to his home to comfort the family. Both took Tylenol from the same bottle Adam had used. They too died within days. The pattern began to emerge, a horrifying coincidence that defied belief. 3 deaths, all linked to the same over-the-counter medication. Investigators scrambled to find a connection, a common thread in these seemingly random tragedies. The medical examiner's office made a grim discovery. Autopsies revealed lethal levels of cyanide in the victims' systems. The poison was traced back to the Tylenol capsules they had ingested. This wasn't a natural disaster, it was murder. Erupted across the Chicago metropolitan area. News reports detailed the poisonings, warning the public to stop using Tylenol immediately. The trusted brown bottles became symbols of potential death. Johnson, the manufacturer of Tylenol, faced an unprecedented crisis. They initiated a massive recall of 31 million bottles of Tylenol capsules nationwide, a logistical and financial undertaking of staggering proportions. The cost of the recall was estimated at over $100 million. The fear wasn't confined to Chicago. It spread like wildfire across the country. People emptied their medicine cabinets, discarding Tylenol and other over-the-counter medications. Trust in consumer products was fundamentally shaken. Authorities launched a massive investigation, one of the largest in U.S. history at the time. The FBI, Illinois State Police, and local law enforcement agencies joined forces. Their mission: find the person responsible for these heinous acts. Loomed large: who would do this, and why? Was it a disgruntled employee, a terrorist act, or something far more sinister and personal? The lack of a clear motive made the case even more perplexing and terrifying. Investigators theorized cyanide was introduced into the capsules after they left the manufacturing plant. This pointed towards tampering at the retail level or somewhere in the distribution chain. The sheer randomness of the victims suggested the killer didn't know them personally. Focus shifted to finding tampered bottles still on store shelves. Teams of investigators fanned out, collecting Tylenol bottles from pharmacies and supermarkets. Each capsule became a potential piece of evidence, a silent witness to the crime. Victims were Mary McFarland, Paula Prince, and Lena Zabnary also died after taking poison Tylenol. 7 lives extinguished by a calculated act of malice. The death toll solidified the reality of a serial poisoning. Investigation became a race against time. Every minute that passed meant another person could unknowingly ingest a poison capsule. The pressure on law enforcement was immense, the stakes impossibly high. The public watched, horror story unfolded. The vulnerability felt by ordinary citizens was profound. A simple headache, a symptom had become an instrument of death, turning everyday life into a potential minefield. The case highlighted the critical need for product safety measures. It became clear that the existing packaging offered little protection against deliberate tampering. A fundamental change was needed to restore public confidence. The days of the investigation were chaotic, a desperate search for clues in a sea of fear and uncertainty. The sheer scale of the recall and the nationwide panic underscored the unprecedented nature of the crime. Investigators pursued countless leads, interviewing pharmacists, store employees, and anyone who might have come into contact with the tampered bottles. The haystack was enormous, and the needle seemed impossibly small. The question of how the cyanide was introduced remained a key puzzle. Was it done meticulously, capsule by capsule, or through some more efficient method? Forensic analysis of the tampered bottles became crucial. The cyanide itself was a potent and fast-acting poison. Its use indicated a deliberate intent to kill, not merely to sicken or cause panic. This was a cold, calculated act of mass murder. Victims came from different walks of life, different ages, different locations within the Chicago area. Their only connection was the bottle of Tylenol they chose to alleviate a common ailment. This randomness was deeply unsettling. Media coverage was intense, amplifying the fear but also serving as a vital public service announcement. The warning saved countless lives, preventing further poisonings by urging people to discard their Tylenol. The Tylenol murders became a defining moment in American criminal history. It was a crime that struck at the heart of consumer trust and forced a reckoning with the vulnerability of the supply chain. The search for the killer intensified, leading investigators down a complex and frustrating path. Amidst the chaos and the nationwide manhunt, a peculiar and disturbing letter arrived at Johnson & Johnson headquarters. It was a ransom demand, seeking $1 million to stop the poisonings. The letter writer claimed responsibility for the deaths and threatened to continue unless paid. The letter was signed, "The Committee of Seven." It was a chilling communication, cold and calculating, exploiting the tragedy for financial gain. This immediately shifted the focus of the investigation from random tampering to a deliberate act of extortion linked to the murders. Investigators quickly traced the letter back to a man named James Lewis. Lewis was a complex and deeply troubled individual with a history of financial difficulties and brushes with the law. His background immediately raised red flags. He had previously programmer and had a history of white-collar crime. He had been involved in fraud schemes and had a reputation for erratic behavior. He seemed to possess the technical knowledge and the lack of empathy required for such a crime. At the time the ransom letter was sent, Lewis was living in New York City with his wife, Carolyn. They had previously lived in the Chicago area, adding another layer of potential connection to the crime scene. His presence in both locations was noted by investigators. Investigators learned that Lewis had a grievance against a former employer in the Chicago area. This provided a potential, albeit tenuous, motive for striking out against the community or a large corporation like Johnson & Johnson. Was this the spark that ignited his deadly plan? Lewis's financial situation was dire. He was reportedly deeply in debt and facing foreclosure on property. The $1 million ransom could have been seen as a desperate solution to his monetary problems. This motive, while plausible, didn't fully explain the horrific nature of the crime. When questioned by investigators, Lewis was evasive and provided conflicting statements. He denied any involvement in the poisonings but admitted to sending the ransom letter. He claimed it was merely an attempt to expose security flaws or to profit from the chaos, not an admission of guilt for the murders. His explanations were convoluted and unconvincing. Investigators found his behavior suspicious and his story inconsistent. The man who sent the letter demanding money to stop the killings was undeniably linked to the case, but proving he was the killer proved incredibly difficult. The legal challenge was immense. While Lewis was clearly connected to the extortion attempt, investigators needed direct evidence to link him to the actual tampering of the Tylenol bottles. They needed to place him at the scene where the cyanide was introduced. Investigation, including searches of his residences and interviews with associates, investigators could not find the smoking gun. No physical evidence directly tied Lewis to the cyanide or the tampered bottles found in the Chicago area. The chain of evidence was broken. Lewis was eventually arrested and charged with extortion for sending the ransom letter. This was a significant legal victory, holding him accountable for attempting to profit from the tragedy. However, it wasn't justice for the 7 lives lost. The extortion trial was closely watched by the nation. Lewis was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison. While the conviction brought a measure of closure for the extortion, the question of his involvement in the murders continued to haunt the case. Lewis maintained his innocence regarding the poisonings throughout his life. He claimed he was a scapegoat, a convenient suspect for a crime the authorities couldn't definitively solve. His denials, however, were often met with skepticism by those familiar with the case. Lewis, while yielding an extortion conviction, also highlighted the limitations of the investigation. Without direct evidence, the link between the extortionist and the murderer remains circumstantial, a frustrating reality for investigators and victims' families. The case against Lewis for the murders stalled. Prosecutors determined they did not have sufficient evidence to meet the high burden of proof required for a murder conviction. The lack of physical evidence was the critical hurdle they could not overcome. He served his time for extortion and was eventually released from prison. He lived a relatively quiet life afterward, but the shadow of the Tylenol murders never left him. He remained the prime suspect in the public eye and among many investigators. The legal system had held him accountable for the extortion, but the ultimate question of his guilt in the murders remained unanswered in a court of law. This legal limbo fueled speculation and kept the case open for decades. Focus on Lewis also raised questions about whether other potential suspects were overlooked. While he was the most prominent figure linked to the crime, the possibility of another perpetrator, or even an accomplice, could not be entirely dismissed. The investigative efforts continued intermittently over the years. The FBI and other agencies revisited the case multiple times, hoping new forensic techniques or a fresh perspective might uncover the missing piece of evidence. The file on the Tylenol murders remained open. This became synonymous with the Tylenol murders, a figure shrouded in suspicion and unanswered questions. His conviction for extortion solidified his connection to the crime's aftermath, but the ultimate truth of his role in the poisonings remained elusive, a persistent mystery in a case that demanded resolution. Murders sent shockwaves through the pharmaceutical industry and regulatory bodies. The vulnerability exposed by the crime demanded immediate and decisive action. The safety of consumer products could no longer be taken for granted. Johnson took extraordinary steps. Beyond the massive recall, they offered free replacement Tylenol in safer, tablet or caplet form, which are harder to tamper with than capsules. They also coupons for future purchases. The company's handling of the crisis became a case study in corporate responsibility. Their swift and transparent response, prioritizing public safety over immediate profits, helped them regain consumer trust, though it took time. More importantly, the Tylenol murders spurred legislative action. Congress passed anti-tampering 1983. The federal crime to tamper with consumer products and established strict such acts. Dated packaging for over-the-counter medications and other consumer products. This was a revolutionary change, transforming how products were sealed and presented to the public. Manufacturers quickly adopted new packaging technologies. Foil bottle caps, plastic wrappers around boxes, and other indicators were introduced. These measures were designed to make it obvious if a product had been opened or altered before purchase. It's not necessarily products tamper-proof, which is nearly, but to make them tamper. Now visually inspect before buying it, provides a layer of protection. Change wasn't limited to medications. The requirement for tamper-evident packaging spread to food products, cosmetics, and other goods. The Tylenol murders had a ripple effect across the entire consumer goods industry. Experts noted the impact of the case on product liability law. It highlighted the responsibility of manufacturers to ensure the safety of their products, not just from manufacturing defects but also from external threats like tampering. This also influenced how law enforcement investigates product tampering incidents. It established protocols for collecting evidence from retail environments and tracing potentially contaminated products through. The Tylenol represent a pivotal moment where a criminal act directly led to significant regulatory and industry-wide changes. It's a stark example of how tragedy can be a catalyst for progress in public safety. It's a powerful reminder of the constant need for vigilance. While tamper-evident packaging is now standard, they emphasize that consumers should still inspect products carefully before use. The enduring mystery of the killer's undeniable improvement in products. The crime was horrific, but it forced a necessary evolution in how goods are protected and presented to the public. The pharmaceutical industry invested heavily in research and development to create more secure packaging. This innovation not only protected consumers but also helped restore confidence in the safety of essential medications. Case remains a benchmark for crisis management in the corporate world. Johnson & Johnson's response is often cited as an example of how a company can navigate a catastrophic event with integrity and a focus on public well-being. The legal framework established by the Anti-Tampering Act provided law enforcement with new tools to prosecute those who would intentionally contaminate consumer goods. It sent a clear message that such acts would be met with severe penalties. Change in packaging dramatic. Consumers quickly became accustomed to checking for broken seals or damaged wrappers. This simple act became a routine part of purchasing medications and other sensitive products. Tylenol Murders served as a grim lesson in the potential for malicious intent to exploit vulnerabilities in everyday life. It underscored the importance of robust security measures throughout the production and distribution process. The impact on consumer behavior was lasting. People became more cautious, more aware of the potential risks associated with the products they bought. A new era of consumer vigilance was ushered in. The story of the Tylenol murders is not just a true crime narrative, it's also a history lesson in regulatory reform and corporate responsibility. It demonstrates how a single, devastating event can trigger widespread changes that benefit society as a whole. The tamper-evident packaging we see on countless products today is a direct result of the lives lost in 1982. It is a tangible legacy of the victims and a constant reminder of the need to protect the integrity of the goods we consume. The legal and regulatory changes implemented after the Tylenol murders set a global precedent. Other countries looked to the U.S. response as a model for enhancing their own product safety standards. The case continues to be studied in business schools, law schools, and public health programs. Its multifaceted impact makes it a compelling subject for analysis across various disciplines. The revolution in product safety sparked by the Tylenol murders stands as a testament to the power of collective action and legislative will in the face of tragedy. It is a crucial chapter in the history of consumer protection. Decades passed, but the Tylenol murders remained an open wound for the victims' families and a persistent puzzle for investigators. James Lewis, the convicted extortionist and prime suspect, lived out his life under a cloud of suspicion. The question of his guilt in the poisonings never faded. 23, shortly before his death, James Lewis agreed to a final interview. This was a moment many had waited for, hoping for a confession, a slip of the tongue, or some new insight into the enduring mystery. Would he finally reveal the truth? The interview was conducted by authorities, a final attempt to glean information from the man most closely linked to the crime. The atmosphere must have been tense, a culmination of decades of unanswered questions confronting the man who held the potential answers. What did he say? Did he maintain his long-held denial, repeating the claims of innocence he had made for over 40 years? Or did the weight of the past finally lead him to confess, to unburden himself of a terrible secret? Reports indicate that Lewis continued to deny direct involvement in the tampering and murders. He reportedly reiterated his claim that the ransom letter was merely an attempt to highlight security flaws or exploit the situation, not an admission of guilt for the poisonings themselves. Investigators reportedly found his statements during this final interview to be inconsistent and, in some areas, potentially revealing. While not a clear confession, his words may have offered subtle clues or reinforced existing suspicions. The details of this view are crucial for legal enthusiasts and investigators. Every word, every pause, every denial is being scrutinized for any hint of the truth. Did he provide details only the killer would know? Interview footage and transcripts are now part of the official investigation file. They represent potentially the last opportunity to hear directly from the prime suspect, to analyze his demeanor and his narrative one final time. Crime enthusiasts, this final interview is a tantalizing piece of the puzzle. It offers a glimpse into the mind of a man who was at the center of one of America's most infamous unsolved cases, even if he was only convicted of a related crime. Offer any new theories about who might have committed the murders? Did he point fingers elsewhere, perhaps attempting to deflect suspicion or settle old scores? His final words could hold hidden meanings. The fact that he agreed to the interview at all is significant. Was it an attempt to clear his name before death, or perhaps a final act of manipulation, playing with the investigators one last time? His motivations remain as opaque as his potential role in the crime. Investigators are now tasked with analyzing this final testimony in light of all the evidence gathered over the past 4 decades. Does anything he said corroborate existing theories or open up new avenues of inquiry? The interview serves as a poignant reminder that despite the passage of time, the Tylenol Murders case is not truly closed. The killer was never brought to justice for the 7 lives taken, and the mystery persists. His death means that if he was the killer, the full truth may never be known directly from him. His final interview represents the last chance he had to speak about the case, and its contents are now being carefully dissected. Implications of his statements are also being considered. While he cannot be prosecuted after death, any information he provided could potentially implicate others or shed light on the mechanics of the crime. Victims' families' interview may offer a mix of hope and frustration. Hope that it might contain a long-awaited confession, but frustration if it merely reinforces the ambiguity that has plagued the case for so long. The inventive purpose of releasing details from this interview is clear: to potentially generate new leads or encourage anyone with information to come forward. Even after Lewis's death, the pursuit of truth continues. The final words of James Lewis add another layer to the complex narrative of the Tylenol murders. They are being examined not just as a historical record, but as a potential key to unlocking a decades-old mystery. This interview underscores the enduring nature of this case and the commitment of law enforcement to finding answers, even when the primary suspect is no longer alive. The quest for justice for the 7 victims continues. The details emerging from this final encounter with James Lewis are a critical development in the ongoing investigation. They represent a potential turning point, offering a final opportunity to understand the man at the heart of the Tylenol mystery. For the families of the 7 victims, the Tylenol murders are not a historical event, they are a source of ongoing pain and a constant reminder of lives tragically cut short. Decades have passed, but the desire for justice remains as strong as ever. Interviews with victims' family members reveal the profound impact of the crime. They speak of the sudden, senseless loss, the shock and fear that permeated their lives, and the enduring grief that time has not fully healed. Share memories of their loved ones: Mary Kellerman, the young girl with a cold; Adam, Stanley, and Teresa Janis, a family gathered in sorrow; Mary McFarland, Paula Prince, and Lena Zabnery, individuals whose lives were stolen by an unknown hand. Cases are a powerful human cost of this crime. They represent the innocent lives caught in the crosshairs of a killer's plan, their only mistake being the trust they placed in a common medication. Investigators who worked the case in 1982 and those who have revisited it since speak of the challenges and frustrations. The lack of a clear motive, the widespread nature of the tampering, and the difficulty in finding direct evidence made it an incredibly complex investigation. They describe the tireless hours spent pursuing leads, the dead ends, and the constant pressure to find the killer before more lives were lost. The case became a defining moment in their careers, a mystery that haunted them. The determination to solve the Tylenol murders has not waned. Even after Lewis's death, law enforcement agencies, particularly the FBI, continue to review the case file, hoping that new forensic techniques or a fresh perspective might finally crack it. Experts reflect on the unique legal challenges presented by the case. The difficulty in proving who placed the cyanide in the bottles and where has been the primary obstacle to a murder prosecution. Highlights the difference between suspicion and proof beyond a reasonable doubt. While many believe James Lewis was responsible, the legal system requires concrete evidence, which has remained elusive for the murder charges. Safety advocates use the Tylenol Murders as a cautionary tale. They emphasize that while packaging has improved, vigilance is still necessary. They advocate for continued innovation in product security and consumer awareness. The ongoing nature of the is a testament to the commitment to finding justice for the victims. The case file remains open, a symbol of the unresolved questions and the hope that one day, the full truth will emerge. The perspectives of those touched by the Tylenol murders, the families, the investigators, the legal minds, the safety experts, paint a comprehensive picture of a crime that had far-reaching consequences. Stories underscore the importance of remembering the victims and ensuring that such a tragedy never happens again. The pursuit of justice is not just about punishing the guilty, it's also about honoring the memory of the innocent lives lost. The Tylenol Murders case serves as a powerful reminder that some mysteries are incredibly difficult to solve, even with extensive resources and dedication. It highlights the limitations of forensic science at the time and the cunning of a perpetrator who left few traces. Of the victims' families resonate with a plea for closure. They want the person responsible to be held accountable, not just for extortion, but for the murders that devastated their lives. Investigators express determination. They may not have solved the case yet, but they haven't given up. The Tylenol murders remain a priority, a cold case that they hope one day will yield its secrets. The legal community continues to analyze the case, examining the challenges of prosecuting complex crimes without direct physical evidence. It's a case that has shaped legal thinking on product tampering and criminal investigation. The advocates use the story to educate the public about the importance of checking product packaging and reporting anything suspicious. The vigilance of consumers is a crucial line of defense. Collective memory of the Tylenol murders is kept alive by these voices. They ensure that the victims are not forgotten and that the lessons learned from this tragedy continue to inform efforts to protect public safety. The ongoing investigation, the reflections of those involved, and the enduring impact on product safety all contribute to the complex legacy of the Tylenol murders. It is a story that continues to unfold, even decades later. Tylenol murders remain one of America's most compelling and frustrating cold cases. While James Lewis was convicted of extortion, the identity of the person who placed the cyanide in those capsules remains officially unconfirmed in a court of law. The mystery endures. Your thoughts on the Tylenol murders? Do you believe James Lewis was the killer, or was someone else responsible? The details of this case spark intense debate among true crime enthusiasts and legal minds alike. Comments and questions below this video. Engage with fellow viewers, discuss the evidence, the theories, and the lingering questions. Your perspective adds to the ongoing conversation surrounding this historic crime. Like this video if you found this investigation compelling and informative. Sharing it helps reach others who are interested in true crime, history, and the pursuit of justice. Let's keep the story and the search for truth alive. Subscribe to our channel for more in-depth true crime investigations, historical deep dives, and explorations of cases that changed the world. We are committed to bringing you detailed, respectful, and investigative content. The Tylenol murders changed America forever, impacting everything from how we buy medicine to how law enforcement investigates product tampering. Let's continue to discuss this case, learn from its lessons, and honor the memory of the victims by seeking clarity and justice. Join our community of history buffs, legal enthusiasts, safety advocates, and true crime fans. Your engagement helps keep these important stories in the public consciousness and supports the ongoing quest for answers. Don't let the Tylenol murders fade into history as just another unsolved case. By discussing it, sharing it, and seeking more information, we contribute to the possibility that one day, the full truth may finally be revealed. Part of the investigation. Comment, like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep the conversation going and the pursuit of justice alive for the 7 lives lost in the chilling Tylenol murders of 1982.